On the Beach 1959 doesn't give you an explosion. It doesn't give you a hero who saves the world. It gives you Gregory Peck waiting to die, Ava Gardner drinking herself through the end of civilization.
May I be of assistance?
Yes, I'm looking for Captain Towers.
I'll try to locate him for you.
And Fred Astaire, driving a race car because there's nothing else left to do. Today we're uncovering 13 hidden truths behind the most quietly devastating science fiction film Hollywood ever made, including the premiere that happened on 7 continents simultaneously.
I'd do anything. Any mean trick I know to get it.
The quote that destroyed a city's reputation, and the man who wrote the book and then refused to watch what they did to it. Let's get into it. 1. 7 continents. One night. Stanley Kramer didn't want a premiere. He wanted a statement.
Civilization was gloriously destroyed.
On December 17th, 1959, On the Beach opened simultaneously in 18 cities spread across every continent on Earth, including a special screening at Little America Base in Antarctica. Moscow received a private screening attended by Gregory Peck himself. King Gustav VI attended the Stockholm premiere. Members of the Japanese royal family attended Tokyo. The Soviet ambassador to the United Kingdom attended London. Melbourne screened first due to time zones to an audience of 3,200 at the Regent Theatre on Collins Street. The flags of all 17 major host cities lined the entrance. The campaign slogan, "If you never see another motion picture in your life, you must see On the Beach." No film before or since has opened on 7 continents simultaneously. Kramer didn't release a movie. He conducted a global intervention. 2. Did the quote that wasn't the most famous thing Ava Gardner ever said about Australia she never actually said.
What do you think about? The nicest thing? Sex or what?
Fishing.
Melbourne is the perfect place to make a film about the end of the world. That line has been repeated in books, documentaries, tourism articles, and every retrospective written about this film. It appears on plaques. It is part of Melbourne's cultural identity. It was invented by a journalist named Neil Gillett of the Sydney Morning Herald as a sardonic joke. Gardner never said it. By all accounts, she had a complicated relationship with the production. The heat was brutal. The shoot was grueling. She was publicly difficult on set.
Right.
But the quote was fiction. It entered Melbourne folklore so immediately and completely that Gardner spent years denying it to no avail. The city built a piece of its identity on a line a reporter made up, and the line is still more famous than the correction. 3. The Ghost City. The haunting shots of an empty Melbourne, trams with no passengers, streets with no people, a city going about its business with nobody left to do it, were not achieved through special effects or closed sets. They were achieved by arriving very early on a Sunday morning in the Australian summer of 1959. The production didn't have the budget to shut down a major city. Police briefly blocked small intersections. But for the most part, what you see on screen is simply Melbourne before anyone was awake. The summer heat pushed the mercury above 40 degrees Celsius on location days. The crew shot in the white-hot quiet of dawn before the city stirred. The ghost city wasn't built, it was found. Every empty street you see is real. Every silent tram is running its route with nobody on it because nobody in Melbourne was up yet. The end of the world looked exactly like Sunday morning. 4. The Navy said, no. The United States Department of Defense reviewed the script. Then they declined to participate. No access to nuclear submarines. No cooperation of any kind. The U.S. military wanted nothing to do with a film depicting the extinction of humanity as the consequence of nuclear war.
Our recommendation is that the submarine should go as far north in the Pacific as possible to Point Barrow and make the necessary radioactivity readings.
The message was too close to the argument they were actively fighting against. Kramer had to rebuild. The Royal Australian Navy stepped in, providing HMS Andrew, a P-class diesel-electric submarine. for all exterior water sequences. Real Australian submariners appear on deck in background shots, paid studio wages for the additional duty. The acknowledgement is right there in the opening credits, word for word. The most powerful navy on Earth said no to On the Beach. The smallest contributed its sailors. That gap is the entire film in miniature. 5. The man who built Melbourne from scratch, Australia, in 1959 had almost no major film studio infrastructure. Kramer was making a 134-minute Hollywood production in a country that couldn't support it, so he built one. The Melbourne showgrounds were leased from the Royal Agricultural Society and converted into a working film studio. Pavilions became sets. Office buildings became production facilities. The submarine interior was constructed inside the government pavilion. Kramer ran his production office from a car showroom. His wardrobe department occupied a display house for farm tools. His personal office was in a building the locals called the Lost Dog's Home. A flock of sheep was provided to keep the grass trimmed on the grounds. That is how Stanley Kramer made a major Hollywood film in Australia in 1959. From the ground up in a car showroom with sheep doing the landscaping. 6. The casting that happened on a Tuesday night, Stanley Kramer couldn't find his scientist. Julian Osborne, cynical, brilliant, quietly broken, needed an actor who could carry devastation without ever raising his voice. Kramer auditioned options. Nothing worked. He was running out of time. Then his wife was watching television on an ordinary evening and turned to him mid-program. "There's your scientist," she said. Fred Astaire was on the screen. Kramer resisted. Astaire was a dancer. Astaire was a musical star. Astaire had never done anything like this. He was wrong. Astaire, 60 years old, given no choreography, no songs, no dancing, delivered the film's most quietly devastating performance. He was nominated for a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor. Critics who had dismissed the casting were silenced within his first scene. And the most important casting decision in the film was made by a director's wife watching The Late Show on a Tuesday. 7. The man who wrote the book. Neville Shute wrote the novel On the Beach in 1957. It was the defining work of his career. Then Kramer bought the rights, hired a screenwriter, and started making changes. Shute collaborated initially, then he watched what was happening to his story. The love affair between Towers and Moira that he had deliberately left unconsummated in the novel, now made explicit. Characters altered beyond recognition, the submarine's fate changed entirely, and he stopped collaborating. By the end of production, Shute had withdrawn almost entirely. He was publicly displeased with the finished film. Gregory Peck agreed with him. Kramer won. The novel ends with Moira taking the suicide pill. The submarine is scuttled. Everything ends. Kramer's film leaves Moira's fate unshown and the submarine sailing home. The man who imagined this world watched Hollywood soften its edges and turned away. He died 2 years after the film was released. 8. Fred Astaire's stunt double Fred Astaire did not drive the Ferrari in the race sequence. The motor racing scenes were filmed at Riverside International Raceway in California, using an array of genuine late 1950s sports cars, Jaguar D-Type, Mercedes 300 SL Gullwing, Porsche 356, Corvette. The driving required was real, at real speeds, on a real circuit. Astaire had a stunt double. His name is in the credits, Carey Lofton, one of the most accomplished automotive stunt drivers in Hollywood history, who had also doubled for James Dean. Astaire played the scene. Lofton drove the car. The character Julian Osborne races because he has nothing left to lose. The actor playing him watched from the sideline while someone else took the wheel. There is something appropriate about that. 9. Waltzing Matilda as Eulogy. Ernest Gold's score won the Golden Globe for Best Original Score. What it actually contains is one of the most quietly devastating pieces of musical construction in cinema history. Waltzing Matilda, the unofficial anthem of Australia, a song about a swagman and a billabong, runs through the entire film in continuous transformation. March tempo, waltz tempo, lullaby, hymn, dirge. By the film's final sequence, Gold has stripped it to almost nothing. A few notes, then a single note, then silence. Gold didn't compose a score, he performed an autopsy. He took the song that represented an entire country and dismantled it in real time, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to take away. The Golden Globe was deserved. The Oscar nomination was deserved. The Academy gave the award to someone else. 10. The Streets of Berwick. When the production arrived in the Melbourne suburb of Berwick, new streets were being built in a residential development nearby. The council named them after the people who had come. Gardner Street, Chute Avenue, Kramer Drive. The streets still exist. They are still named after the actress who never said the famous quote, the author who hated the finished film, and the director who made it anyway. If you live on Gardner Street in Berwick, you live on a road named after a woman who filmed the end of the world in your suburb and then went home to Hollywood and spent years denying something she never said. 11. The Golden Gate Bridge trick. The sequence showing a desolate San Francisco, the submarine surfacing to investigate a mysterious radio signal, the city intact but empty, required footage of the Golden Gate Bridge with no traffic. There was a rumor, circulated for decades, that the production paid guards at each end of the bridge $500 each to stop cars for a few minutes, just long enough to get the shot. Kramer never confirmed it. The studio never confirmed it. But the footage exists. The bridge is empty. The city is silent. Someone stopped that traffic. The question of who paid whom has never been definitively answered. In the film, San Francisco is alive but abandoned. In the novel, it was destroyed. Kramer kept the city standing because he wanted the audience to feel what had been lost, not what had been broken. 12. And the suicide pill argument. When On the Beach was released, the medical community in several countries responded with letters to newspapers and medical journals. The objection was not to the science, it was to the message. Doctors argued that depicting the Australian government distributing cyanide tablets to its citizens was an act of cinematic nihilism. That showing a population accepting euthanasia as the rational response to nuclear fallout normalized hopelessness as a political philosophy. Kramer answered publicly. The horror wasn't the pill. The horror was the radiation that made the pill a mercy. If the pill disturbed you, that was the point. The film was designed to make you too uncomfortable to remain passive. The argument between Kramer and his critics in 1959 is the same argument the film continues to make now. 13. The price of ending the world on the beach cost Stanley Kramer his money and nobody else's conscience. The film was a prestige production, a star-studded United Artists release, the subject of one of the most ambitious global premiere campaigns in Hollywood history. It received BAFTA wins, Golden Globe wins, Oscar nominations, a United Nations award. It recorded a box office loss of $700,000. The audiences who were supposed to be shaken into action didn't come in large enough numbers. The critics who praised it couldn't fill the seats. The film that Kramer made as the most urgent warning of his career, the film screened on 7 continents to heads of state and royal families and Soviet ambassadors and lost money. It is still the most powerful nuclear war film ever made. It is still the film Ridley Scott named in his list of the greatest science fiction films of all time. And it lost $700,000. Kramer spent the rest of his career making films about things that mattered. Inherit the Wind, Judgment at Nuremberg, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and Never Stop Trying. There is still time, brother. There is still time. Which one lands hardest for you? The premiere on 7 continents? The quote Melbourne still believes that Ava Gardner never said? Or the man who wrote the book and turned away when he saw what they'd done to it? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe and hit that bell. More classic science fiction secrets coming soon. See you in the next one.